Hello, guys. Welcome back to TKO Boxing. In this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different because just as we were starting to get excited about the Fury Wilder 3 fight, obviously, as we now all know, it's been postponed. So before we get into it, I just want to say like and subscribe, guys. It really does help us out. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Scott because I know he's very, very passionate about this. So hit us, Scott. What do you think?
Well, the first thing I want to know is how has he managed to get COVID in what's supposed to be a secure training camp? You know, we're 2 weeks away from the fight now, and he's got COVID, or someone in the camp has, so they've had to postpone it. So the first thing I think the WBC should do is a proper investigation into that. And if it's because he's been doing something stupid, vacate the title. I'm being deadly serious. Vacate the title. Get rid of it. I'm sick of these heavyweights. I'm just absolutely sick of them. And we're here in October. Unless Fury has serious COVID to the point where it's, affecting his breathing. I believe there was another boxer that had that exact problem, didn't they? Off the top of my head, can't think who it was. But unless it's a case of that, why is it October? I guess it's because once again, that's when it's going to make the most money. But you know what? White's thrown himself into the ring. Of course, that's not going to go ahead, is it? Because, that's going to wreck the money fight. Wilder Fury, if obviously White wins. Guess what? It now means that White has probably got to wait another 6 months before he gets his opportunity. As the fans have got to wait another 6 months to see a remotely decent fight. Probably longer because I'm not calling AJ. AJ's fighting a heavyweight. And I mean a heavyweight. Usyk isn't a heavyweight. This is going to be some big joke session it's going to be bigged up, and it's going to be like, oh, Usyk was great at the weight below. And then guess what? Joshua's going to have a massive reach advantage, massive height advantage. And what do you think is going to happen? He's probably going to win lamely on points. And this division's a joke. And you know what? The final thing I'm going to say before I pass it on, boxing deserves to have the likes of Jake Paul in at the moment because this sport is a joke. So it deserves to have jokes in it. And I'm being deadly serious. They're doing more for boxing than these guys are at the moment. They're bringing in more boxing fans. They're bringing in more fans. The likes of Fury, the likes of Jake Paul, Logan Paul, all these TikTok boxers. They're bringing in more fans than the likes of Fury and Joshua are. Why? Because they're just constantly scared to fight. They just constantly want their money. And you know what? Honestly, vacate the title. Give it Wilder and White, fight it out. Winner takes the title for me because I'm done with Fury. I'm done with AJ. And you know what? In the future, I'm just going to be supporting Wilder and White from now on. I hope both of them get an opportunity to, put them both out of boxing, to be honest.
I mean, just before I hand over to Ben to get Ben's thoughts on this, I love the passion, I've got to say it, and I do agree with a lot of things you have just said, to be fair, Scott. But I do love how you brought Joshua into this, even though Joshua haven't changed in the slightest.
I know Joshua hasn't changed in the slightest, but he's joking. Okay, it's a mandatory. What a surprise! The boxing authorities are ruining good fights.
I agree with that.
Maybe it's not fully his fault, but the whole heavyweight division is an absolute joke at the moment. It has to be said, and that's why I threw his name into it because he's a joke man, just like Fury is.
No, I do see where you're coming from. So, I mean, before we move on to what could happen next, although you have briefly touched on it, Ben, just, what do you think about this?
I think that's all for today, folks. No, I get Scott's point. I think the whole stripping him's a bit extreme when you look at Teofimo Lopez. The same thing's happened with him, and there's no word of stripping them. If it's sometimes that's such big camps, it can get in.
But do you not think there's an argument that, I mean, I think if my memory serves, Teofimo Lopez only beat Lomachenko in October, I believe, last year for the titles. In fairness, yes. Fury, it was February last year, and I know obviously there's the COVID situation, but he's not fought now in what is basically 18 months, and it's going to be like 21 months by the time he actually comes round. So, do you not think that carries weight? No.
Well, the one thing I will say, I was going to bring that point up. This is Wilder's fight now. I do just think it is, because even though Fury is a fit fighter, but like, you know, he has to battle the fat, doesn't he? He has to battle the weight. It's not a natural weight he's at. He's unlucky that he tends to just put the weight on. And I'll go back to Warrington. COVID affected him, and in his last fight, he did not look like the busy fighter he was before. He looked like it really had that long-term effect. And if it's going to have the same effect on Fury, because of how long he's been out the ring as well, like you've said, I honestly think we could be seeing Wilder just mopping him up within a few rounds.
And I'll blame Fury for that if that happens. Obviously not because he's got COVID, but it's his own fault that he's not been in the ring since last February. And, you know, as I say, honestly, the last 12 months, who's brought in more fans for boxing? The Pauls or Fury and the likes of AJ? Because the last 12 months have done nothing. No, tell me I'm wrong. Who's brought in more boxing fans in the last 12 months?
Well, I
hate to say it.
I think Conor Benn. I think
he's building those fans now. He could sell a pay-per-view. He could
say, with the right dance partner, I would agree. I think he could do decent numbers on pay-per-view. But there is weight in what Scott's saying, in fairness. You know, I think with how big YouTube is now becoming, I do think that there is a lot of casual fans that have started watching boxing because of the Pauls, and, you know, especially after, in fairness, Logan's performance against Floyd Mayweather, they probably are boxing fans now. So it'll probably benefit the sport. But at the same time, you know, I mean, Eddie Hearn said it himself a few times recently, hasn't he? The best have got to start fighting the best, because otherwise these casual fights are going to get made, and all of a sudden the actual sport that, you know, we all love, you've ruined it, haven't you? And I think it is a fine balancing act. So I do appreciate what you're saying there, in a sense, Scott. And you know, I do think the best have really got to start stepping up and doing what they should be doing. I mean, I think it comes down to there's this fear of losing, and there's too many egos. You know, the networks don't want their fighters going on other networks with other promoters, and it's all got to stop. I mean, Muhammad Ali is considered as one of the best ever, and, you know, he lost multiple fights. If you're going to fight the best in your era, you're going to lose, aren't you? And all that happens is now, I mean, we get 2 fights, trilogy fights, but it happens, and it's at this rate. To be fair, I think what you're trying to say, Scott, and I would agree with it, Fury and AJ's legacies will end up being, well, they never really fought, you know, they never fought the undisputed fight, did they? Whereas if you go back and you look at other weight classes, I mean, look at Josh Taylor. I know he's not quite the name, but as a boxer, he's phenomenal. He's already undisputed at his weight class and looking at moving up for super fights now. So I do hear you. So, I mean, just quickly before we wrap this up, what do we want to see genuinely happen next? I mean, there's no need to be too, you know, realistic on this, because the fight probably will get rearranged. But I mean, you know, Ben said it himself. Wilder's been out a long time. So what do we want to see happen now?
See, I honestly,
go on, Ben.
I'll look to see White step in. I know it's not going to happen, but it's just that's. I think we've seen the Fury Wilder twice, and not many people wanted the third. But since I got it, it's like, we'll make the most of it and look forward to it. So I think 9 out of 10 people would much rather see White against any of the top 3. And I think I just want to see White in a big fight again.
Yeah, just to follow on from what Ben's saying, really, I want to see White finally get his shot, because that's probably going to be delayed more and more and more, especially if AJ Joshua's next. AJ Fury's next. Do you know what? I'll tell you what I want to happen, and I touched on it before. I want Wilder to knock Fury out. I then want him to go and face Joshua and knock him out. And then I want to see White Wilder for the undisputed, and hopefully these 2 joke men and won't get anywhere near the top of the game again.
Controversial. I love the support for the British fighters.
I don't care anymore. The main person I'm supporting is Dillian White now, and he's a British fighter. I'd rather support Wilder. I'd genuinely rather support Wilder now. Stuff them both. I hope both of them get knocked out.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, it is actually just a joke how long Dillian White's had to wait for his shot, and this, you know, probably it will delay it, won't it? Because if Joshua and Fury are fighting within a couple of weeks of each other and come through, they're then going to probably negotiate the undisputed fight for spring next year. Then there'll be so you could be 2023, couldn't you, before Dillian White's actually getting his shot? Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, if they go spring, they'll probably go again like October, November next year. So no, I mean, I think we'll wrap it up there, guys. I love the passion there of both of you, particularly you, Scott.
Come on, you slip. Come on, Wilder.
Right, we'll wrap it up, guys. Let us know what you're thinking in the comments. Obviously, this is a controversial topic, so let us know what you think. And as I said, don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.